this would be my presentation on Plato by myself, Miguel DeLeon. If you see on your right side, there is a photo of Plato himself, or a photo to him back then, but a drawing to us now. That's how Plato looked like when he was older. So, for the short biography, Plato was born in 428 BCE in Athens. He was born to an Athenian lineage, so that means he was high up in the class. He wasn't like, a commodore or military. No, he was rich. His parents were rich, so that means he was rich. So his father was Aristotle, but he died. So his mother Petron remarried to a politician named Paterlips. And, Paterlips was high class, so that meant they kept their lineage and they were still maintaining their high class, which we got to be thankful for, because thanks to them being high class, Plato had access to many things like school, books, and all that. So that means he was able to read at a younger age, in which he was able to make philosophies that we can study and ideas. But later on, his philosophy and ideas will truly merge, and he'll start creating many more later on. So he grew up during the Platon War between Sparta and Athens, and that was between 431 and 404 BCE. He grew up during the war between Sparta and Athens, but in the very end, Sparta beat Athens in the Athenian Empire, and destroyed the Athenian Empire. So Plato had to grow up during the war and watch the carnage between Sparta and Athens war, and that would last for so many years. And Plato would be able to see that. But thank goodness Plato was young, so he was not able to go to war for the Athens, or he would have died in war, because Sparta was a fearsome army, and we would never had Plato's philosophies, ideas, or anything. So we got to be thankful for him being so young and never going to war to fight for Athens. So Plato's studied philosophy, poetry, and gymnastics while he went to a school in Athens. Philosophies, of course, like usual, it's like his philosophies, ideas, and all that. Gymnastics. So gymnastics for them basically meant they're, training their body, mind, soul. Basically gym, but it's more, for them it's called gymnastics. And poetry, of course, poetry to write poems. So this is a weird fact, but Plato did die at a very old age, at age 81, which you don't expect because, it was back then, and, you never see that. But we do see Plato die at the old age of 81, so that means he passed so many expectations. He was an outlier for, the age of death. So he technically avoided many illnesses, diseases, and other health problems, and managed to live to 81, which is good because he was able to spread his ideas in poetry and teach others about it. So he died at age 81, of course. So Plato's influences. Plato's influences in his life was Socrates. Plato was a follower, and Socrates was a teacher of Plato. So if we see in this photo, the one in the right is Plato at his old age. But Socrates was considered a very dangerous man to Athens because of his ideas, philosophies, and all that. So he was brought to trial for his ideas in court, and versus the Athenian court. And at the very end, it was the Athenian court that decided to execute Socrates by forced suicide. But they committed forced suicide, so it gave the idea that Socrates just committed suicide, so the public won't be outraged. And the public did see it. But many others didn't. Socrates was a forced suicide, so they basically executed him. After Socrates' trial, we have written accounts of Socrates' trial thanks to Plato, his student. Plato did write the trials and what happened at the trials, so we have basically firsthand of what the trials were like and who was there and how it was and how it would have been. Thanks to Plato, we have the trials. So we know how the trial went for Socrates, how it was just a one-sided fight for somebody's life, and how the Athenian trial just said, you know what, You're going to commit suicide. And we're going to make it seem like suicide, but we're going to execute you by force. So we do have events of forced suicide by the Athenian trial, and we have it thanks to Plato. So we can thank Plato for seeing how the Socrates trial was versus the Athenians. So after Socrates' trial and forced suicide because the Athenian court, Plato did travel around to major cities like Egypt, Sicily, and Italy. So he did not travel to back roads of countries, back roads and all that. No. He traveled the major ones. He traveled to major cities like Egypt, major cities like Egypt, Alexandria, like Sicily. I don't know what major cities in Sicily, but whatever major cities in Sicily. Italy, like Florence, Naples, and Rome. He traveled to those to study with other philosophers, like an example of Archytas and Theorus. He did go around, and technically for them back then it was wide. It was like the world for them because they didn't know much about North America and America. So technically for them, they would have said Plato traveling the world. So that Plato was rich. So people did see Plato traveling the world. So after 12 years of Plato traveling the world, he returned back to his hometown, his birthplace, Athens. After he turned back, he did build an academy at the age of 40. So he was already half his age before he died. And there in Athens, he built an academy, which was the very first university in the world. So technically, we can thank Plato for building the first university because we took inspiration from him to build more universities for more people to study and get degrees. So you can thank Plato for building the first very university in Athens. Aristotle, at age 17, came to Plato's academy to study, and Aristotle was from northern Greece. Now, Aristotle was seen the one more major because he's more famous than any other person out there. So that's why we see Aristotle more that studies at Plato's academy. But there was many other famous philosophers to study at the academy, but Aristotle was the most famous one, and we know him the best out of Plato's students. But after Plato's death, the academy continued to flourish for many, many, many years, even centuries. But thanks to one guy only, thanks to Sulla, the academy / university was destroyed in Varia in 836 BCE because he was from Rome and he saw the Athenians as a threat. So he destroyed Rome. So General Sulla from Rome destroyed the very first university to ever exist that Plato built. So you can thank General Sulla for destroying the first university and not keep it as a treasure. So, follows and teachers. If you see here on this map, or this photo, that there was a lineage. One of the books was talking about lineage too, but here, I'll explain it a little bit more. The lineage. Plato, there was Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. That's what we know. So basically, it was Socrates, then Plato, then Aristotle. So basically, it's going to be teacher, student, teacher, student. So Socrates was the original teacher, then the student was Plato. After Socrates died, Plato became the teacher to Aristotle. After Plato's death, Aristotle became the teacher to other philosophers. So we're going to have a teacher-back, teacher-student lineage, which is good, because without Plato, we wouldn't have Socrates' ideas, because Socrates never wrote down his ideas of all our philosophies. So we can thank Plato for writing down his ideas and other things, because we would have lost Socrates to time and history itself. And with Plato, he taught Aristotle his ideas and philosophies, and Aristotle learned his philosophies and built on them, or even made new ones. So in this slide, it would say that Plato was a follower of Socrates, or a teacher, or Socrates was a teacher of Plato and his ideas, but it was short-lived because of the forced suicide the Athenians made Socrates do. And Plato's Plato, was the influencer, but teaching was teacher to Aristotle. So if you notice in this picture, they all have complete different ideas, but overall, if you realize that Plato is the one major key that helped the history in the world, because Plato taught everything to Aristotle that Socrates taught him, and Socrates didn't write it down. Plato did, and thanks to Plato, we have Socrates, and then Plato wrote it. Since Plato wrote it down, and he learned himself and everything, made new philosophy. He brought it on to Aristotle, and Aristotle to us. It's a weird thing, but yeah, that's how it is. So during Plato's lifetime, sorry, during Plato's lifetime, there was many theories and forms that Plato had. More theories, not forms. Sorry. So one of the big major theories was the theory of form. It is very complicated to get your head around it and understand, because if you're not basically Plato himself that made it, you won't understand it. And many scholars will try to do it today, but they fail very, very, very hard because it's so complicated. Even today, we're stumped. Even back then, they got stumped. So basically, the theory of form, if you see on this photo right here, it'll make a little bit more sense. The theory of form is basically we can touch, we can feel, right? So we feel the material world, like, us. We can feel us. We can feel the world, the earth, animals, objects. But inside those material or goods and all that, there's another form. And the other form is perfect. Perfect, because we can't touch it. We can't change it. We can't manipulate it. But we can't, it's perfect, that's the thing. But our world, our material world, is not perfect, can be changed, manipulated, corrupt. It's not, we can't touch it. But we can touch it. But the form we can't touch. So the theory, if on this slideshow, the theory of form is there is another perfect world inside the world, or inside us, or inside of an object or animal, and it's perfect and cannot be touched. It's non-physical, and it's inside of us. It is a form. It's a form of a form. And while us, we're outside and we can touch things, we can touch, feel, we can be corrupted, we can change, things can change. And, it's not perfect. It's really not perfect. But the form inside of us is perfect, beautiful itself. Like, we technically can't change it. We might have like limbs missing. The form inside of us is still perfect. It still has an arm, and it's still perfect because we can't touch it, we can't change it, we can't do anything. It's going to be the same. So here's some examples of theory of form. The rose is perfect and the rose is imperfect and can wither or be changed different colors. They can change colors now due to people. But the form of the rose inside of it, of the physical rose, it can't die. It can be changed or manipulated. So it's going to stay the same how it originally was. So if it sprouted red and was perfect outside, it looked perfect outside, it's even more perfect inside. And cannot be changed. And when the rose dies, the form still exists because it's still perfect and can't change or die. Now, another example is the world. The world, say if you go bend down, like reach over, you can touch it, you can feel it, how the earth feels, dirt and everything. And it can grow old, like to the point where we can't live it on it anymore. It's physical, so it can be corrupt, can be changed and everything. But there's another form of the world that is inside the physical world that is perfect. Can never change, can never be changed, can't be corrupt. And there's still, I don't know if there's humans on it, but it's perfect. It's just perfect. There's no changes, nothing, and it exists in harmony. Nothing happens, nothing will happen to it. That is the theory of form. A little bit further explanation, but many people still can't explain it because Plato himself can be the only one to explain it. So theory of communism, no. Theory of communism is not communism. For you, like say, it's communism. No, it's not communism. But technically, Plato made communism before Karl Marx made communism. So, Karl Marx communism is basically overthrowing the government. Everybody's equal and no private, lands. But communism for Plato was different. So Plato theory of communism for Plato was he believed without communism, the clash of ideas, so us thinking our ideas and everything, and in clashes of ideas, interests will happen because interest, ideas, and family instincts distract a man from his community surrounding him or he is a part of. So what this is trying to say that due to our families, our desires want to get this and that, and our ideas like thinking all that keeps us distracted from our community that we live in or surrounded by. With us being distracted, we won't be clashing with other ideas of other humans. We won't be clashing with, hey, my idea is better than yours. No. Thanks to that, thanks to, to family instincts, interest, and ideas, we don't clash with other people's ideas. We know our ideas, but we don't clash with others. That's what theory of communism is. So technically, communism is trying to keep, it's trying to prevent clashes of ideas, like clashes of humans' ideas back and forth. But thanks to, ideas, families, and interest, it keeps us away from other people's ideas and clashing with them. So we save ourselves problems. In the very end, it helps us. So another famous theory of Plato's, another famous one is the theory of form, theory of education. So theory of education is one of the pillars to society, and the other being theory of communism. So theory of education, the education is a pillar and intertwined with the other pillar of communism. So communism and theory of communism, theory of education intertwine. They're like pillars. So if one pillar falls, the rest falls too. And if the other pillar doesn't fall, the other one doesn't. So they're intertwined. They work together perfectly in harmony. So theory of education is to Plato the cure for society's illness because it uses the logical part and not anything else. So what basically this is trying to mean, that this is, Plato saw logical part, our logical part are like thinking, brain analysis and all that, like thinking, processing thoughts and all that as, the cureness of society's illness, because society overall has an illness to Plato. So Plato saw the logical part of us, like our brain, that it's the cure to society. Not anything else, not the rest of our body, not anything else, but our brain, our logical part of thinking, where we can think, process, analyze. That is the cure to society's illness in Plato's eyes and view. That is theory of education. There's another famous theory that Plato had, and that is the theory of souls. So Plato's theories of souls is the soul is divided into three parts: the rational part, the spirited part, and the appetitive part. Okay, so if you that rational part is like, your brain. Let's say it's your brain, like it's like thinking, brain thinking. The spirited part is your heart, like supposedly where your soul is, like your desire, like not your desires, but like your heart, your soul's right there, your passion and all that. And your appetite part is like somewhere around your stomach, because it's going to be lower up on the scale. So it's the rational part, the spirited part, and the part, and they're in order. So if you see in this photo right here, the Latin terms for rational part is logos, the spirited part is thymos, and the actinium part is eros. And in the little bubbles, it's for the rational part, it says rational, truth, intelligence, brain, false, mind, reason. While the thymos, the spirited part, is in the bubble white horse, ambition, spirit, passion, emotions, anger, heart. So basically it says that you have emotions. It's your emotions, your desires, your passion. It's your emotions. While eros, the appetitive part, is your evil stuff, corrupt stuff, like your sexual desires, your thirst, your belly, your hunger. So your human features of your body, the corrupt parts, the human features. The human features are the corrupt part, which are the opinion part. Here's more explanation on theory of form. The rational part is like the brain. Like I said earlier, it's like the brain because you can think, analyze, and it's the ruling class. It's ruling class because, like the brain, it rules above the body. So it's on top of the peak, not below. While in the spirited part, in Plato's term, is the military class, but it's like the heart because it's where bravery, overcoming challenges you face, and strength comes from. So that is the middle part. That is the spirited part. Your heart, the military class. A penitent part is the commoners or the stomach because it's the lower class, very low of it all low, and it's the nasty part of human because of lust, greed, and does not have any higher goals. So what it means by that, it's the nasty parts of humans. Due to that, it's the lowest part, and it doesn't have any higher goals because it's just gonna always have nasty things. It's the nasty part of humans, like the stomach is, because that's all where your food is. And the spirited part and the rational part are higher because it's going to have higher goals, and it's not the nasty parts. So the rational part will be always on top, while the spirited part will be always in second, and the Platonian part will be always in third. That's how it goes. So that's how it goes. Like it says right here, the ruling class, the upper higher, like the brain, then the military will always be higher than the commoner because it's the closest to the ruling class. Then the commoner will be the very last. That's what it means by the theory of form, the rational, the spirited, and penitent part. So, Plato and influence. The book on Platoism and its influences. It's very. I try to sum it up as best as possible. So this book discusses why people don't study Platoism as much as Aristotelism, due to the fact is people see Platoism as going against their values, more beliefs, more all that. That's why they don't want to study Platoism, because it's going to go against them. They see it as going against them, and people don't like that. Unlike Aristotelism, it doesn't go against someone's belief or values. It just kind of cooperates with them. So that's why they'll study Aristotelism more than Platoism. In the book, it mentions other books like The Republic, other books that Plato wrote himself, like The Republic, and other books. And it also says the soul is the most valuable part of the body because it's sincerely how we are. So what it means by here is that without our soul, we'll just be mindless zombies that are breathing, can feel things, just walking on this earth, not even caring, no feelings or anything. But thanks to the soul we have, we can feel, we can touch, we can give emotions. We're emotional, while without our soul, we're not emotional. So we can, thanks to our soul, that's why it is the most important part of our body. It also says Plato and Augustine are important figures because Plato, his ideas and theories that still transcend time, that we still study throughout the ages, and are still important and relevant to our age in modern times. And Augustine, because the way he set up a government, so it could be effective and everything. The book also talks about God and Christianity, which is weird because Plato didn't know Christianity existed. Plato didn't know God existed because he grew up in Athens, so he knew the Greek gods, not Christianity and gods. So this book talks about Platoism and God. And the book talks about how God understands all knowledge because God already knows everything. He knows everything. He understands how things work. But us humans, we were born without knowledge. We were born without rational thinking. So we learn it as we grow older and up. We will continue to learn until we die. The book also talks about all of Aristotle's talks about Aristotle too, and it also mentioned the Hellenistic era in the book. But back to the Christianity, it talks about Christianity because it helps compares Plato's idea, explains Plato's idea, and what Plato's ideas go against in Christianity. That's why the book uses Christianity a lot, because it's gonna help explain Plato ideas more. Talk about how Plato went against certain ideas that Christians don't like or other people don't like. It's also going to help further explain Plato's ideas and theories so we can further understand it. And we're not confused most of the time with Plato. So the allegory of the cave. The allegory of the cave, it is written by Plato himself, so it is first-hand written book. And it talks about Socrates, his teacher. Because it talks about in the book how Socrates didn't write anything. So the fact is, if without Plato existing, we wouldn't have barely know anything about Socrates and his writings and his teachings. But thanks to Plato, we know about his writings and teachings. That's what the book was also trying to explain, that thanks to Plato, we have Socrates' ideas, thoughts, and theories. But without Plato, that Socrates would have been lost to history and time. And we would have barely know about him, except through third-party accounts. And there's a conversation between Socrates and Glutton. And Glutton is Pluto's brother. The Socrates between Socrates and Pluto's brother talks about how philosophy, point of view, and world and others, and what best choices to do. And it also talks between Socrates and Pluto on how God knows what truly is right and what truly is wrong. So what this is trying to further explain, that if someone heads over there, steals a purse, but some people might see it as that it's fine, because it's okay because he needs money. There's something wrong with him. He has an illness. But in God's view, that's truly wrong. God knew that's truly wrong. You shouldn't be doing it. So us humans, we don't know what truly right is, what truly wrong is. But in God's view, He knows what's truly right and what's truly wrong. It also talks about about the line of students and teachers. So basically, what it's saying, how Socrates was the original teacher, then Pluto was a student, and after Socrates died, Pluto became this teacher to Aristotle. After Plato died, Aristotle became the teacher to other philosophers. That's what this book is trying to say, that there's a lineage of teachers and students, and that's what and Plato was major. Plato was considered to dominate science and math due to the fact that his philosophies and theories involve more science and math than any other subject. Like triangles, there's some theories of Plato's that involve science, and math. That's why Plato was considered in the book to be more dominant in science and math. But before the Renaissance, Plato was overlooked by his student, Aristotle. So basically, Plato was the teacher of Aristotle, but Aristotle was more more known throughout the world. To the fact is that he didn't clash with others' ideas. And Plato did. That's what people didn't like about Plato. That's why Aristotle was more studied in the West than the East. But in the East, Plato did dominate with his theories and ideas in the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic states, because they were fine with him going against people's ideas and stories. That's why so basically, Plato was more known throughout the East and North Africa, while Aristotle wasn't. He was more known throughout West Europe and Britain, except Scandinavia because of the Vikings. That's what it means, that on the east side, to the east that Plato dominated, and to the west that Aristotle dominated. That is Aristotle, a little photo. So, Plato, but during the Renaissance, it all changed. Everything changed. Everything, where Aristotle dominated the West and Plato dominated the East, it changed because of due to many scholars, but one scholar was more renowned for helping it bring, was Petra. And if you see on the photo on the right, that is Petra. This is a photo of him to him and a drawing to us. So Petra helped revive Plato's ideas and scholarship. He helped revive Plato, not physically, but mentally and idea-wise. And without him, we would barely know about Plato. So we can say thanks to Petra that we know about Plato and his ideas his studies. So thanks to Petra, Plato came back to life, not physically but like mentally, came back to life in the West and was studying the West now in the Renaissance than before the Renaissance. So we can thank Petra for what all he did, because he helped revive Plato and his theories and ideas, so we can study it. Because if without him, maybe some Plato's ideas could have been lost to time and space, because people don't like people that their ideas go against others. People want to think one-minded, and Plato thought about many other minds. But with Petron, he helped bring Plato back to life so other people can study him. On my next slide, these are all my sites that I use, but on the very bottom of this slide, Taylor A.E. and its influences, New York, Cooper Square Publisher, 1963, is the book of Platoism and its influences. On the next slide, if you see, the next slide will be the allegory of the cave. Enhanced, and its publisher will be Enhanced Media Publishing, but it was written by Plato himself. But the Enhanced Media Publishing just published it in modern times, so we can just read it. But back then, Plato did write it, but thanks to Enhanced Media Publishing, they republished it in our time, so we can study it. So we don't see it as ancient history or ancient time. So this is my presentation on Plato, but there would have been many more theories on him, but it would have been never ending, because Plato was a very, very, very intelligent man. More intelligent than anybody else that was during his time. And Plato helped bring to light so many ideas that, we wouldn't have known about. But there's some interesting facts about Plato. Plato succeeded, yes, his age. But Plato did travel throughout, basically the world. Basically the world to them, because they saw the world as small, round. Like, not round, but they saw it small, so there's not that much, But Plato did travel around the world, technically. Because how much the population was lower, the world, considering they didn't see the world as much. Like, they didn't see South America, North America. So Plato technically did travel throughout the world because he was richer. And also, Plato had some famous dialogues that were famous, but there were some dialogues that were lost to time. Sadly, they were lost to time and everything. Also, if in one of the photos for Socrates' trial, the one in red here, I forgot to explain here, but the one in red is Plato telling others about Socrates' trial and what the Athenian government did to him and how the Athenian government saw Plato. And Plato's telling others about it. So we can say thanks to Plato that he was telling others about Socrates' trial. And also, Socrates did die young. He did die very young for his age. And the age back then was very 30 to 40 years old, but Socrates lived past twice the limit of that. So, Socrates did many things even in his age. We could say thank you for that. So, this will be my presentation on, this photo right here is the Athens, his academy. This is where all the philosophers were. This is where Aristotle was. The one in red is Plato himself, while the one in blue is Aristotle. You could tell that Plato was older. That's why at age 40, while Aristotle was younger. So this was later in time, after Aristotle became more of an adult. Then he was younger. Plus, you could see other people around there because they were philosophers. Other people were getting taught by him. You can see young people getting taught by other philosophers. They were all there to be taught philosophy, ideas, and other school-related things. This is why they consider this place the very first university to ever exist in the world. But remember, it all got destroyed by Saul, the Roman general. So this will be my presentation on Plato himself.